It is an incredible story.
My daughter's been missing since this morning.
What's your daughter's name?
Lacey Peterson.
And I've watched it unfold.
The FBI has now joined dozens of local police in this missing persons investigation.
This was an all-American family. I knew that story was big. The national media was there. All the locals were there. It became a show. It became a spectacle, really.
I had nothing to do with Lacey's disappearance.
She was a pregnant mother in a relationship with a man that she adored.
2 bodies found in the bay are those of Lacey Peterson and her baby.
The prosecution told us Scott kills Lacey, Scott dumps Lacey in the bay.
I'm convinced that he's innocent.
He's not a guy that would kill a woman. There was critical evidence that was never presented to Scott's jury. Could have been the key to everything. Could have led us to the murder.
After serving 14 years on death row, Scott Peterson has filed an appeal. Could he get out?
It's clearly not over for Scott Peterson.
That's correct, Your Honor. I'm innocent.
Scott killed Lacey. There was no doubt about that.
Did Scott maybe do it, probably do it, could have done it, must have done it? Maybe, but not beyond a reasonable doubt. Scott Peterson did not get a fair trial.
It was December 24th, 2002. Everybody's getting ready for Christmas. Families are gathering, getting ready to open gifts. And then suddenly, the Modesto Police Department gets a call saying Lacey Peterson, a woman who's 8 months pregnant, is missing.
How can I help you?
Yes, my daughter's been missing since this morning. She's 8 months pregnant. She took her dog for a walk in the park. The dog came home with just a leash shot. Jesus, I can't believe it.
So the dog came back without your daughter?
Right.
What is your name?
My name is Ron. I'm a step-cat. Her husband, Scott Peterson, is on his way over to the park.
What's your daughter's name?
Lacey Peterson.
I'm Tim Helton. I'm a retired sergeant in the Modesto Police Department and worked for the department during the Lacey Peterson search. The initial call was that she had been out walking her dog in East Loma Park and hadn't returned.
All of Lacey Peterson's valuables, her purse, keys, were all left for the house.
Her husband, Scott, told us that she was missing, and he gave us some information that she may have gone walking down to the park.
Scott tells the Modesto police that he last saw Lacey around 9:30 that morning when he left their home to go fishing. He believes she was planning to walk their dog, Mackenzie.
The Peterson dog was found wandering with its leash. No one knew if Lacey had taken it out for a walk, and that's how she disappeared.
I'm John Bueller, one of the detectives that worked the Peterson case. East Loma Park was only about a block and a half away from Scott and Lacey's house. So that was naturally one of the first places that we were going to look.
The park was very important. So immediately that became ground zero for the search for Lacey Peterson. My name is Gloria Gomez. I covered the Scott Peterson case.
Volunteers and officers had actually walked the park on foot that entire night looking for Lacey.
While the search is underway, Modesto police asked Scott down to the station to give a detailed picture of Lacey's day.
So, today, she told you what she was going to do for the day?
Yeah.
And what was that?
Take the dog for a walk, and then she's going to the store to buy for Christmas morning breakfast tomorrow. She's going to make gingerbread cookies for tonight.
I can only imagine how Scott was feeling. His wife was carrying his child. Lacey was excited about being a first-time mom, had the baby's name picked out, little Connor, had the nursery ready.
The nightmare continues for friends and family as Christmas morning arrives, and Lacey is still missing.
On Christmas Day, we returned to the park to do an expanded search. The park's huge. It actually runs for several miles along the creek bottom. And we didn't want to overlook anything, so it was a very thorough search.
There was empathy for this unborn child. Is she out there? Did she walk the dog and fall? And is she incapacitated? My name is Ted Rollins. I was a reporter for KTVU. Started covering the Peterson case from the moment Laci was missing, and it was something that people were instantly attracted to, and they wanted to help, especially people in Modesto. They wanted to find Laci Peterson.
This is Christmas Day, and there was already a volunteer center. This was a situation where she could be in severe danger, so could her unborn child. So there was an urgency to find her.
Modesto, California was a town of a little over 200,000 people in the Central Valley of California. It was a commuter town, a short drive from San Francisco itself.
Laci and Scott lived in a really nice middle-class neighborhood in Modesto, and they looked like the perfect American couple.
I then went over to the neighbor's house to start my first interview. One of the things that I was looking for was information about Scott and Laci. What kind of marriage did they have? Did they have financial problems? Were they good neighbors? This is an extremely important time to get all the information possible.
I am Debbie Volsky. My first impression of Laci was sweet and outgoing, and she's beautiful. She was kind of like a Disney princess.
Everybody that we talked to all painted Scott as the ideal guy. Nobody badmouthed him behind his back. He just seemed like the all-American boy.
I mean, this guy had the looks, had the wealth, had a golfing scholarship. He had the American dream. Everything just seemed perfect.
When we didn't find her in the park and we didn't find any evidence, it was very concerning.
With no leads in sight, on December 26th, Laci's family makes an emotional public appeal for her safe return.
Whoever has her, please, please, please let her go. Bring her back.
We love her so much. We want her back. Please, let us have her back.
You see anguish in the face of Sharon Rocha. Where is my daughter? That's when the panic started.
On December 27th, the FBI joins the investigation as they expand the search drastically, desperate to locate the missing pregnant woman.
Search teams on horseback, in helicopters, in boats, and on foot.
Given the huge, enormous geographical area that we were concerned with, it was absolutely a needle in a haystack.
They were constantly showing Laci Peterson's picture, hoping to get tips.
We had a tip line that was exclusively for tips regarding to the Laci Peterson search.
If you have any information, please call the Laci hotline.
Laci didn't do anything that we could see that contributed to her disappearance, such as getting liquored up, going to the bars, getting involved in drugs, running with a rough crowd or anything like that. Her car was still there. There was no evidence of forced break-in in the house, no destruction of property indicating that she'd had a fight in the house with somebody. It was almost like she just vanished. The leading cause of death for pregnant women is homicide, and generally at the hands of the father of the child. So when we have a pregnant lady missing at the tail end of her pregnancy, of course the first thing we're going to look at is her husband.
Me and my crew, we were all camped out at the home of Laci Peterson to talk to family members, to try to figure out what exactly was going on. And there's other press there, the national media was there, all the locals were there. It became a show.
When we arrived, we gave the viewers what we knew at the time, and that was who she was, her name, where she was last seen.
Multiple networks gather outside the Peterson home, all competing for the attention of family members.
And then we see Scott. This is my first encounter with Scott Peterson. So the first thing I did, I walked right up to him and I said, "Listen, Scott, I want to know as much as I can about Laci, your wife." And he looked at me and he started saying, "All I want is Laci to come home. That's all I want." And I go, "I understand that. But the only way the public will feel that is if you go on TV and you tell people how much you love her, how much you miss her." And he goes, "You know what? I will do that someday." Then after that, he walked away, and that was it. As a reporter, you're always hoping to make a connection. There was no connection. There was like a wall in front of Scott Peterson.
Scott! Hey, why don't you come and talk to us?
He wanted nothing to do with us, especially the camera. In fact, he asked us not to take his picture.
People want to hear from the husband. The problem Scott has is that he wasn't emotive enough. Grew up in a very stoic family. His dad's like that. You don't emote all over the place.
Lacey's husband was avoiding the media. So right away, I had a feeling like, why is he avoiding us? That was my gut telling me something's odd here.
From everything that I saw, he acted the way any normal husband would do. Does this sound like a killer? Not to me.
Coming up, a shocking twist that turns the public and Lacey's family against Scott Peterson.
Here we go, here we go, here we go.
Everyone knew this was going to rattle the entire case.
And later, is it possible that by focusing on Scott Peterson, the police missed key evidence that would come to light years later?
There was critical evidence that was never presented to Scott's jury. Could have led us to the murder.
Scott Peterson had been planning to kill Lacey.
There's no way that Scott Peterson could have killed her because he was gone by this time.
I'm thinking he didn't do it.
8-month pregnant Lacey Peterson disappears on Christmas Eve, kicking off an intensive search and media whirlwind.
Lacey's husband, Scott Peterson, was avoiding the media. So right away, I'd had a feeling like, why is he avoiding us?
After 72 hours, police are no closer to finding the missing woman.
She was a pregnant mother looking forward to giving birth to her child in a relationship with a man that she adored. It was almost like she just vanished.
3 days earlier, on the same day Lacey was reported missing, it appeared police began forming suspicions about Lacey's husband, Scott Peterson.
When the first patrol officers came out to the house to investigate the report of a missing woman, they called back to the Modesto Police Department and said, send a detective. We have a strange feeling about the husband.
Yeah, strange feeling. What is that? What is a strange feeling? I mean, it's an emotional gut reaction because it's a feeling. It's not evidence. I'm Ann Bremner. I'm a criminal defense attorney, and I covered the Scott Peterson trial for most of the major networks.
There was very limited information that was available to us from the start. But one of the things that we learned from Sharon, Lacey's mother, was that the first thing that Scott did when he called her is he said, Lacey's missing.
He didn't ask, oh, is she there? Did you talk to Lacey? Is she coming over? Did she go over?
He immediately went to the fact that she was missing, even though her purse was there at the house.
He was very cautious. Everything was very methodical.
There's no evidence, and yet they're thinking she's gone, she's kidnapped, she's murdered, and he's the one that did it. He remained the only suspect at that time, from the beginning to the middle to the end of this case.
The lead detective played me a phone message that had been left by Scott when Scott was driving back from the Berkeley Marina.
He said he had gone fishing the day Lacey disappeared.
On Christmas Eve, the day Lacey was reported missing, Scott had called his wife. The call went to voicemail.
Hey, beautiful. I just left a message at home. 2:15. I live in Berkeley. I won't be able to get to Villa Farms to get that basket for Papa. I was hoping you would get this message and go on out there. I'll see you in a bit, sweetie. Love you. Bye.
Scott leaving this message for Lacey, I guess you could look at it that, oh, this is something that what a great husband would do. But for us, when you take a look at the wording on that call and you compare it with Scott's demeanor, the flowery I love yous and the affection that was present in the wording on that call didn't match up with his lack of panic when we were dealing with him.
But not everyone saw Scott Peterson's behavior as unusual.
From everything that I saw, he acted the way any normal husband would do. I'm Richard Cole. I'm a journalist. I covered the Scott and Lacey Peterson case. He had treated his wife like a queen. No one had ever seen them argue. No one had ever seen them fight. He spent the weekend before Lacey disappeared out in their backyard planting flowers for her. She would say, because she was 8 months pregnant, couldn't bend over and do it herself anymore. So Scott's on his hands and knees planting flowers for his wife. Scott got a designer purse for her for Christmas. That was what was under the tree. Is this the present that a husband who's about to kill his wife is going to put under the tree?
Along with Scott's allegedly flowery voicemail, police find Scott's lack of emotion rather odd.
When did you realize you were going to go fishing?
Oh, that was a morning decision. It's in the
was a morning
go play golf at the club or go fishing.
Okay.
It seemed too cold to go play golf at the club, so yeah, just decided to 9:30 or.
Scott's demeanor just wasn't one of urgency. He was pretty cool, pretty reserved.
The police are keeping copious notes of all his lack of response, his lack of concern, but he was fully cooperative. He went to the police station and answered questions. How much more cooperative can you be?
What concerns me the most is the fact that your dog came home with a leash on.
What concerns me most is doing anything I can to further progress.
I appreciate that.
To rush to judgment. Are we suspecting him based on evidence, or are we suspecting him based on our feelings?
Although the police believe Scott is acting suspiciously, Lacey's family maintains Scott had nothing to do with Lacey's disappearance.
Laci Peterson's family absolutely loved Scott, and they wanted nothing to do with any speculation that he might have something to do with it.
We believe that Scott has nothing to do with Lacey's disappearance. They're a happy couple, and they love each other very much.
He had a reputation of being the person that went the extra mile to help a neighbor. He had no criminal record.
Pretty much everybody that we talked to all painted Scott as the ideal guy. All the right moves, all the right stories, world traveler. Gosh, what's not to like? I liked him.
As more time went by, it got less and less likely that she would be found safe. The candlelight vigil was held at Loma Park. It was heart-wrenching.
This community has wrapped their arms around the Peterson family and have been very moved by Lacey's disappearance.
Scott told police that he had a warehouse and the boat was in the warehouse. But the Roaches didn't know that he had bought a boat. That was news to them. Police went to this warehouse and they went in.
Although Scott had told them about the warehouse from the beginning, in the weeks following Lacey's disappearance, police would search Scott's warehouse multiple times.
There were these cement blocks that were outlined. It's almost like when you're trying to have something dry and it dries, but you still have the ring of cement. There were 4 of those. And they thought, okay, so it's clear that he made anchors, cement anchors. Where are the anchors? They weren't in the warehouse, so where were they? All these things were starting to add up, and it was starting to paint a picture to police. Maybe Scott Peterson had been planning this for a while. This won't make headlines. It'll be a missing woman, and it'll go away, and he'll pretend to be the grieving husband.
But some believe there to be a very innocent explanation for Scott's supposed secrecy regarding the boat.
There was a big deal made about whether Lacey and her in-laws knew about the boat. I mean, do your in-laws know everything that you have or everything that you do? He showed the police the boat right away. There's no evidence that she did or didn't know, but what's the relevance of that?
The whole story about the boat was from the police side that he had secretly bought the boat as part of his plot to kill Lacey. There was no secret boat. It was a surprise for his father-in-law, so he could say on Christmas, guess what? We have a fishing boat.
Police continued to expand the search, increasingly concentrating on the Berkeley Marina, where Scott had told them he was fishing on Christmas Eve.
Scott driving from Modesto to the saltwater there in Berkeley at the marina probably would have taken a little over an hour.
Why would you go fishing in the San Francisco Bay on Christmas Eve and leave your wife, who's 8 months pregnant, home alone? That immediately didn't make sense.
It was unusual that somebody would fish San Francisco Bay in such a small boat. The bay can become quite rough.
damned if you do, damned if you don't. When someone's convinced, that you're guilty, everything that you do makes you look even more suspicious.
There was some criticism that came from a variety of different people that we only focused on Scott from the beginning, but that's simply not true.
One of the detectives told a neighbor of Scott's within 1 hour of when police were called out that they knew what had happened to Laci Peterson. It was very clear to the neighbor that he was saying that Scott did it. Classic tunnel vision.
It wasn't just a couple of us working on this case. We had a whole team of detectives and officers that were looking at all sorts of other things that were going on. We were checking sex registrants that were living in the area, anybody that had a history of crimes and violence that was paroled out of state prison. These were all happening simultaneously when we were looking at Scott.
There were a lot of very good witnesses who saw Laci Peterson walking Mackenzie. The police interviewed all these people and they just dismissed it out of hand. They said they were all wrong.
The police zeroed in on Scott Peterson within hours. He was always their only suspect, truly in the murder.
On January 24th, 2003, 1 month after Laci's disappearance, the Modesto Police Department alerts the media that it will hold a press conference. This will prove to be one of the most shocking twists in the entire case.
Modesto Police said at 7 o'clock, they were having a press conference. We're like, okay, this is good. They don't hold press conferences unless there's something big. So we're like, they found her, there's a huge tip, maybe they have a suspect, maybe they're gonna announce Scott's the suspect. We're in the Modesto Police Department's main headquarters. It is packed. We're shoulder to shoulder, reporter to reporter, waiting to hear what Modesto Police have to say. Everyone knew this was gonna rattle the entire case.
Here we go, here we go, here we go, here we go, here we go.
Finally, they come out. I had never expected this in a million years. But a petite blonde comes out with all the lead detectives in the case.
Miss Amber Fry will make a brief statement.
Who's Amber Fry?
1 month after the disappearance of Laci Peterson, Modesto police call a press conference to announce a stunning development in the case.
Miss Amber Fry will make a brief statement.
A petite blonde comes out, and she's shaking, and she looks up, and then she told her story.
I met Scott Peterson November 20th, 2002. Scott told me he was not married. We did have a romantic relationship.
This girl is announcing to the world she was having an affair with Scott Peterson. We're taking this live. This is like breaking news.
I am very sorry for Laci's family.
That was shocking to us.
Amber Fry took this story and made it absolutely explode.
Secret that has torn two families apart. Scott's affair with Amber Fry. The Fresno woman says Scott tricked her into believing he was single.
When she came on scene, we thought it was a big story beforehand. It went absolutely crazy. People couldn't get enough of it.
Hi, I'm Amber Fry. I didn't ask for this to happen. I was a young single mother, thought I met a great guy, and was excited. I first met him in November. We hit it off really well, and he was funny and charming and good looking. I asked if he had any children, and he said no, and he told me he had lost his wife.
Amber didn't pay much attention to television, so she really didn't know any of the media hoopla that was going around with the missing case involving Laci.
My daughter, was very young and kept me busy, so the TV just wasn't on. So I never came across it or heard anything. We were dating, and little things were starting to not feel right, like something was up. Like him talking to me when there's water running, like he's in the shower or bathroom of some sort, which just kind of was a little red flaggish. Like, why are you always talking to me with water running? I went to a friend to ask if he could look him up and see if he found anything, whether he was possibly married or still married or just whatever he could find.
So a friend of hers told her that the guy that she had been seeing, Scott Peterson, could possibly be the husband of a missing girl from Modesto. And that's when she called our tip line.
Although the public became aware of her in January 2003, Amber Fry had actually called the Modesto police tip line almost a month earlier, 1 week after Lacey had gone missing.
Amber gets a hold of one of my partners, and she said, and she understood that our agency was investigating a guy named Scott Peterson, and she was wondering, Amber, if this was the same guy that she was dating. And I'm sitting across from the lead detective with one desk between us, and so I can see his expression, and I know that something big is up.
The detectives asked if we could meet, and I said yes. I was on pins and needles, feeling scared. Scott told me he's in Europe. He's, away on a trip. I just learned that he has a missing wife, and he's not, in fact, in Europe. He's actually in Modesto.
She wanted to cooperate, she wanted the truth, and she actually showed us that Scott wasn't this perfect guy that everybody had been painting for all this time.
I don't know how long I sat there and cried. I was in shock. Couldn't tell you how much time passed. At that point, they had asked if I would be willing to record our conversations, and I said yes.
We stopped at Radio Shack to pick up a recording device to attach to Amber's cell phone. And in the midst of putting all this stuff together, Amber gets a call from Scott.
Hello?
Amber.
Yes.
I was fumbly, I was shaking, I was just so nervous. There was just so much to remember because my truth was he was in Europe.
Can I tell you how wonderful you are? That's pretty easy to do.
And she was perhaps one of the greatest little actresses I've ever seen in my life. She was able to engage in a conversation with him like we weren't even on the planet.
I always call you when I tell you you're special. And I need a better, bigger word than special. Like looks like thesaurus or something.
All right, well, you have a good day, okay?
Hey, sweet.
It was challenging because I would get off the phone with him and then just be, and then I'd immediately call John and say, oh my gosh, this is what he's telling me.
Over a period of weeks before we finally had her cease the phone contact, Amber recorded over 29 hours of phone conversation with Scott.
Before introducing Amber to the world at the press conference, the Modesto police had arranged a meeting with Scott's supporters, Lacey's family, to deliver the shocking news.
And they brought with them a photograph of Scott and Amber together. And when they showed that photograph to Lacey's mom, she looked at it and turned to them and said, why did he have to kill her? And at that moment, Lacey's family absolutely turned on Scott Peterson.
It pretty much unraveled after that. The moment Amber Fry came out, immediately, Lacey Peterson's family had their own press conference.
Our one and only focus is to find Lacey and to bring her home to us. I love my daughter so much. I miss her every minute of every day.
Sharon Rocha got right up there and said, we no longer support Scott Peterson. We want him to tell us what happened to Lacey.
We were shocked to find out that he'd been having an affair, and we felt that if he had not been truthful about that, that possibly there's other things he needs to talk to us about.
There was anger, there was frustration, there was betrayal. Everything you could think of that family was feeling at that moment, and we were all airing it live. Now we had a huge story. Huge.
They were convinced that Scott was responsible for Lacey's death. They shut down their volunteer center. They stopped doing searches.
He was having an affair. He didn't want to be public because his wife was missing, but it doesn't make him a killer.
Did you murder your wife?
I get word that Scott's getting ready to talk to the media.
he realized that he had to come forward and talk to the media and explain what was going on because of the cloud of suspicion that has been circling him since this all began.
I really felt like he was thinking, hey, I am charming. I can talk my way out of anything, and I'll get the public back on my side. And I thought, I have to get this interview. I have to.
I was calling him every day, multiple times a day, asking for an interview, and he always said, oh yeah, I'll talk to you at some point, but just not today.
I get a call and I see my phone says Scott Peterson on it. So I pick it up. I said, hey, Scott. He said, hey, Gloria, I want to give you a little interview. And I said, great. And I cannot even tell you how excited I was.
Gloria Gomez was one of only 4 journalists Scott selected for interviews. So was Ted Rowlands.
I was happy and relieved, to be honest, that he allowed me to do one of the interviews.
Peterson wanted to do the interview at his house, which I thought, this is cool. I get to go inside the house.
He was in total control of the interview. He restricted it to one camera, and he made us take our shoes off, which was very strange.
I'm like, okay, I've never done it in an interview with no shoes on, but okay. My photographer knew, like, time was of the essence. So he's moving quick, he's setting up his gear. You're just glancing around, looking around, and then it's going through your mind. It's like, was she killed here? The kitchen area, there was like a chalkboard where they wrote messages back and forth, or maybe notes of maybe groceries or whatever, but on the chalkboard was Merry Christmas. And I thought, wow, I wonder if Lacey wrote that. And I wonder if that's like her last message.
A month after Lacey's disappearance, and just a few days after Amber Frey has come forward, Scott Peterson gives 4 highly coveted television interviews. Is he doing it to save face or to keep the search for Lacey alive?
This is the time to really kind of catch him off guard. I knew that sitting down with him, making him answer questions, was going to be the key to solving this case.
There are a lot of suspicions out there. You had a girlfriend.
Right.
Your response to me is that you had no comment either way.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't you just come clean then?
Well, I'm glad you asked the question. It simply, wasn't appropriate to comment on it. It's just not important to comment about that. I'm glad that Amber came forward. You want me to turn that off?
Yeah, what is that?
That's my phone, unfortunately. I thought it was off. Then I'll just answer that question again.
Okay.
The phone rings during our interview, which I thought was interesting because it's been over a month, your wife's been missing. Any phone call could be the phone call to say, we found Lacey. She's safe.
Yeah, it's kind of going crazy, isn't it? Okay.
And I thought, wow, if your wife is missing, you think you'd want to take every phone call. What does he do? He turns off the ringer and keeps interviewing.
How do you feel, though, that, the Rocha family says they can't trust you?
They're wonderful people, the Rocha family. Okay, question my morals and my poor decision-making. That's fine. But don't stop looking for Lacey. She's out there somewhere.
It was really a no-win situation for him because no matter what he said or how he said it, people were going to dissect it and say, oh, obviously he's guilty. Look at the way he says that.
And you can be the key to finding them by putting out that, next.
You're looking at the camera.
Well, it's a plea to the audience.
Go ahead.
That's why we're doing this. That's really all I think I have to say.
The more he did it, the more people picked away at it.
Obviously, the relationship I had with Amber was inappropriate. And I told Lacey about it in early December. It did definitely not put the marriage in jeopardy. Obviously not a positive thing.
While Peterson may have tried to control the interviews themselves, He could not control the media coverage on them afterwards.
To suggest to ordinary people like myself that his wife was, and I'm quoting, okay with it, that he was having an affair. And I think that's a glaring lie.
The problem Scott has is that he wasn't emotive enough. Doesn't work real well on television.
I saw what everybody else saw in that interview.
After you told Lacey, you continued to see Amber. Was that also the right thing to do?
Yeah. No.
And then even after Lacey went missing, you continued to romance this girl?
No.
After he did the interview, he immediately called me and was like, I didn't say that. I'm sure you watched it, but they cut me off. I didn't say that. So, I mean, he was dishonest about that too.
But not everyone in the media is so quick to write off Scott Peterson.
As soon as Amber Frey stepped onto the scene, it explained everything to me why Scott Peterson was acting the way he was. Why didn't he want his image on television? Well, because he had a girlfriend.
If I were in the same position and I had a mistress, I would certainly be tempted not to tell the police and have it all come out, and then your wife comes up. And you say, oh, I've just destroyed my family.
Amber Frey was the explanation for all of this. And for me, unlike everybody else, I'm thinking he didn't do it.
2 months after Scott's interviews, and well past his wife's due date, Lacey and Connor's fate remains a mystery. Hope for their discovery is dim.
The case basically slowed down because the search for Lacey was turning up nothing. There was nothing that tied Lacey's disappearance to Scott. They had no physical evidence. They couldn't arrest him, so this case really wasn't going anywhere until what happened next, and that changed everything. The night of April 12th, there was a very intense storm in the San Francisco Bay Area. The next morning, April 13th, a couple was walking their dog, and they saw something strange along the shoreline, something along the rocks. They called police.
4 months into the investigation, body of a child, almost full term, is discovered on the shore outside the area where Scott had been fishing.
There's a huge tip. Me and my crew head out there, and sure enough, they're confirming it's the body of a fetus, a baby. And so as I'm getting ready to go live, I'm literally on the phone with sources, getting as much information as I can about this.
The next day, April 14th, the body of a adult female was discovered in the same general area.
No head, no arms, no legs, just a female torso.
Intense interest just ignited again, and people believed that this was likely Lacey and this unborn child, which they'd named Connor.
Investigators are trying to determine if the bodies found in the San Francisco Bay belong to missing Modesto woman Lacey Peterson and the baby she was pregnant with when she disappeared.
This case was now back on the front pages.
You had that sick feeling in your stomach that this was going to be Lacey and Connor. And here we have the bodies recovered near the Berkeley Marina in the area where Scott had been. It was pretty evident at that point that, at least to me, that he was probably going to be responsible for their murder.
No word yet on whether the two bodies found in the bay are those of Lacey Peterson and her baby. The lab results could come any time now.
The big question now is, where is Scott Peterson?
Constant surveillance on Scott was being done at that time. Scott's hovering around San Diego. There always was the concern that Scott would try to take off, possibly across the border into Mexico. And then it was going to be a whole new set of problems to bring him back. So as they're processing the DNA evidence to try and link these two bodies together and to Scott, we're preparing our arrest warrant.
An arrest was coming, and was coming soon.
On the 18th of April, 2003, we finally received verification that the DNA on the two bodies that were found confirmed it was Lacey Peterson and her unborn son, Connor, and that's when we arrested Scott. And that's when we discovered all the things that he had in that car.
When Scott was arrested, he had nearly $15,000 in cash with him. He had a backpack with knives and water purifier. He had an axe, dyed his hair kind of an orange-ish blonde, and he had a goatee. He looked a lot different.
Every place he went, people said, "Oh, it's Scott Peterson." So he was hoping to disguise himself. He was trying to get away from the media. He was being followed by private detectives.
He had snorkeling equipment. He had backpacking equipment. He had neckties, dress shoes. He had dress shirts. He had shorts, all packed into that car, which suggested to me that he was planning on leaving, and he could have certainly gone across the border.
Was Scott planning to escape across the border? Or was there a more innocent explanation as to why he was headed south?
There was never any indication he was going to Mexico. His life in Modesto had been destroyed. And so he went down, spent time with his parents in San Diego.
His family had an explanation for everything that Scott was found with. But in totality, he's in San Diego near the Mexican border, and he has all of this with him. It sure did make it look like he was ready to run.
I had sources with the Modesto Police Department. I got word he was going to be arrested. We had graphics with Scott's picture, boom, with the word arrest on it. That's how prepared we were.
The Modesto police whipped up a media frenzy through lies and leaks, and it kept the reporters on their side. They created this atmosphere of hatred focused on Scott Peterson.
Finally, that phone call comes. So I go on the air and I break the news. Scott Peterson's been arrested. This is just the beginning. We haven't even got to the trial yet.
Scott Peterson is charged with the murder of his wife and unborn son.
I'm convinced that he's innocent.
But will he get a fair trial?
There was more media at this case than there was at O.J. Simpson.
It was a mob. It was a lynching.
Amber Frey knows she's a reluctant celebrity.
I miss you, baby.
That jury hated him.
Scott was going down.
What started with a report of a missing pregnant woman is now a notorious double murder case in Modesto, California.
When 8-month pregnant Lacey Peterson went missing on Christmas Eve, the community searched furiously, hoping for her safe return.
The reward for information leading to Lacey's whereabouts stands at $500,000.
Police appeared to immediately focus their attention on Lacey's husband, Scott, possibly ignoring other potential suspects. Shocking revelations about Scott's personal life turned the media and the public against him.
Scott told me he was not married.
A week after 2 bodies washed ashore, police arrested Scott Peterson, although there was no forensic evidence connecting him to the crime.
DNA analysis completed yesterday established the identities as Lacey Peterson and their baby.
Once the bodies were found, I had called some of the family. I know I called Brent, Lacey's brother. It was hard because these are people. They're not just the subjects of your story, they're people. Brent's such a good guy. He said, I knew he did this to her. I knew he did this to her. At that point, you're not really a reporter. You're just a human being relating to another human being in complete anguish.
Returning from San Diego with Scott Peterson in custody, the Modesto police must notify Scott about his wife and child.
We told him that the DNA results had identified Lacey and Connor. There might have been a little sniffle. I couldn't tell really if he was tearing up too much. But of course, I'm driving, so I can't study him too much except through the rearview mirror. We continued the drive until I said, hey, we're going to get something to eat. If you'd like, we'll get you something to eat. And that was when he said, well, John, where are you thinking of stopping? And I told him, I said, well, there's an In-N-Out burger up the road. And he looked at me and he just said, In-N-Out. I'll have a double with cheese, a small fry, and a vanilla shake. Maybe 10, 20 minutes earlier, we told him that his wife and his child were dead, and he's ordering a cheeseburger like it's no big deal, like you're coming back from fishing. Now, to me, that kind of summed it up. And if I had any doubts about his involvement in her murder, they were pretty much erased with his order of that cheeseburger.
We had heard that he was taken into custody around noon down in San Diego and that they were on their way back. Over the next few hours, this huge crowd assembled outside the jail. And when they pulled in, it was an incredible scene. People were yelling murderer, and it was something that I've never seen before or since. He was in the back seat of a sedan, and they brought him in. It was just a wild, wild scene. I'll never forget it.
Under tight security, Scott Peterson was walked into a packed Modesto courtroom today, facing 2 counts of murder.
California law allows for a second count of murder for the death of an unborn child.
The prosecution charged him with double murder and immediately said that they were intending to seek the death penalty.
Even though there was no direct evidence in this case, no eyewitnesses, no blood, no fingerprints, no saliva, no anything, no crime scene, the DA announced they'd be seeking the death penalty for Scott Peterson. A week later, Scott Peterson hires Mark Geragos.
Mark Geragos, he had already established himself as a high-powered attorney in Los Angeles who had celebrity clients like Winona Ryder, Michael Jackson. He's the big dog.
The story of how he got Mark Geragos was very interesting. He appeared, I believe, on Larry King. Geragos said, well, of course he's guilty.
They seem to be fairly confident that they have something, and they clearly are focused on him.
Jackie, his mom, got hold of Geragos and told him the story. And Geragos said, okay, maybe I'll check this out.
In 3 months, Geragos goes from skeptic to convert.
They became convinced that he's innocent.
When was that?
After talking with the parents and reviewing the discovery.
Choosing a lawyer is difficult in any case, but when you get to a level of this type of media coverage, you need a lawyer that can handle the spotlight. For someone like Mark Geragos to step into this case is basically a light at the end of the tunnel for someone like Scott Peterson.
Mark Geragos suggested Detective Phil Owens did not follow up on critical leads.
Geragos immediately gets to work investigating suspects the police did not pursue.
Mark Geragos said that there was this subculture in Modesto of real dark, demented people that were going around kidnapping pregnant women. And one of them happened to be Laci Peterson. They were driving up, saw Laci, kidnapped her, threw her in the van.
Before Laci had disappeared, the Children of Satan cult had been prosecuted by the Modesto DA on multiple murder counts. My name is Matt Dalton. I am a criminal defense lawyer, worked on the Scott Peterson case.
7 pregnant women disappeared from that area between 1999 and 2002.
The Modesto DA's office had a cult unit which specialized in the prosecution of cult members. It's not a coincidence that 7 pregnant women disappeared from that area. I'm telling you, on Laci Peterson, there's satanic cult influence here. She was targeted because she was pregnant.
It appears police chose not to investigate this theory.
You can't just look at one person, no matter how smart you think you are as an investigator, that you've got the right guy, and ignore all other leads. Scott Peterson was always their only suspect, truly, in the murder.
A survey conducted by a local TV station finds that 83% of Bay Area residents think Scott Peterson is guilty or probably guilty. To counteract this, defense attorney Mark Geragos uses a pretrial motion to push for a change of venue.
The judge ruled that there needed to be a change of venue. There was no way they could hold this trial in Stanislaus County because Scott was enemy number one there.
The judge agrees to move the trial from Modesto to Redwood City.
Redwood City and Modesto are basically the same communities. 80 miles away, and they have the same basic news coverage. I'm Michael Cardoza. I was part of the Scott Peterson criminal defense team. You want to move this case and give this kid a fair trial, you move it to LA or San Diego, where people don't pay a lot of attention to it. That is the biggest mistake in this trial.
Wall-to-wall media coverage of the case makes it incredibly difficult to find impartial jurors.
You couldn't go anywhere where people didn't know about the Scott Peterson case. It took months and months and months to pick a jury. Most of them said, no, I think he's guilty.
Attorneys interview over 1,500 potential jurors over a period of 9 weeks before agreeing upon a jury.
My name is Mike Belmessieri. I was juror number 4 in the Scott Lee Peterson murder trial.
I'm Justin Faulkner. I was juror number 5 in the Scott Peterson trial.
When I first received the summons for jury duty, my wife handed it to me, and I open it up and I go, oh, damn, I've got jury duty. She goes, oh, it's probably for the Peterson trial. I said, no way.
I hadn't followed anything about Scott Peterson or Laci Peterson. But when I got the jury notice, I just thought it was for a random jury trial. So automatically it was, how do I get out of this?
With the change of venue, a new judge is assigned to the trial. On his first day, Judge DeLucchi bans cameras from the courtroom to reduce media influence on the jury.
Judge DeLucchi did not want the jurors swayed by seeing the media cameras in his courtroom. I'm Peter Chaplin. I was the media coordinator for the Scott Peterson double murder trial.
The trial of Scott Lee Peterson begins on June 1st, 2004, 17 months after Laci Peterson was reported missing. With Scott Peterson's life on the line, lead prosecutor Rick DiStasso faces off against defense attorney Mark Garagos. DiStasso has prosecuted several death penalty cases. This is Garagos's first.
When I walked into that courtroom, when I finally saw Scott Peterson, I saw a young man that was about the same age as my oldest son.
You walk in the room and the place was packed. And it was like, wow. I mean, wow.
Please don't block my way.
The interest in the trial was off the charts. There were people from literally around the world covering this trial.
I'm right behind you.
I had a friend that was in Iraq and saw my face on the TVs playing in the background.
You know, OJ trial you could watch on TV, that was easy. This was a little different. The cameras were not allowed, yet information was disseminating out of that courtroom.
Reporters inside the courtroom managed to work around Judge DeLucchi's restrictions.
You could either text or email from inside the courtroom, and that was the way you could alert your producers around the country on what was going on minute to minute. So while there were no cameras allowed during the trial, there was plenty of information.
There was more media at this case than there was at O.J. Simpson. The media demonized him, saying there's just one murderer, and it's Scott Peterson.
Anything to say, Mr. Peterson?
After almost a year of preliminary hearings, jury selection, a change of venue, and an increasing public appetite for all things Scott Peterson, the trial for the murder of Laci and Connor Peterson is underway.
I think Scott Peterson was a cold, calculating person. I think he intended to kill Laci.
The prosecutors presented to the jury a very strong circumstantial evidence case. And they did it methodically, and they did it in a way that was very compelling to this jury.
The prosecution's case was Scott killed Laci in the home. He then transported her body to the back of his truck. to the warehouse where he kept his boat. He then transferred her body into the boat and then took the boat out to the bay. He left her body there anchored down by these little 8-pound anchors that he supposedly created in the warehouse. That was what they wanted us to believe.
But not everyone believes this version of events.
He's not a guy that would kill a woman. The police early on in the case had leaked false stories about Scott making anchors. The lead detective says that he sees an outline of 5 circular marks on Scott's flatbed trailer. Show us what you were looking at. We see the picture, and there aren't 5 circular marks on that flatbed trailer. He made it up. 0 evidence of anchors being made.
The prosecution was unable to create any momentum at all because there was no real physical evidence against Scott Peterson. There was no murder weapon, there was no blood, no DNA.
I remember during the trial, I railed against the prosecutors, saying they weren't prepared. Right from the get-go, I could tell they're not going to prove this beyond a reasonable doubt.
With no forensic evidence, it appeared to some that prosecutor Rick DiStasso was presenting a lackluster case.
Garagos was doing a very good job. I actually wondered to myself if DiStasso actually believed what he was putting forth, because it just didn't seem like he did. The prosecution did not prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he killed her.
The feeling was, for the first few months of this trial, was that Scott Peterson was going to be found not guilty.
The public need for any stories related to the case continues to drive the media frenzy.
The insatiable appetite for this story was like nothing that I'd ever seen before. This was covered on an hourly basis, not just a wrap-up of what happened in court today. It was what happened 10 minutes ago, and people were glued to every part of this case.
They all wanted to be part of the big show because it became a show. It became a spectacle, really.
It was big business for the networks. What was happening was riveting, even if you couldn't see it. That drama helped networks sell a lot of commercial time because the audience was eating it up.
They had set up tents, and all of these legal analysts came out of nowhere. They came out of the woodworks, and they would all break apart every witness. Were they credible? Were they not credible? So we were getting analysis in a split second. The moment they were off the stand, it was insane.
With every network delivering its own spin on the case, even the people deciding Scott's fate can't escape the media.
That jury should have been taken away and sequestered, taken out back doors, not let anywhere near the public, not be allowed to go home during that whole trial.
You know, you're walking past these media tents, and they're in there, talking about Scott Peterson this, Scott Peterson that, and it's the next tent, and it's the next tent. I hear it, what they're saying, and it's not like I had a choice. There was no going around it. The media was always filming inside the lobby of the courthouse. And I was coming to the courthouse one morning. Brent Rocha happened to be standing next to me that day, and there was a cameraman right behind us. I said, trying to avoid the news today? And he said, yeah, wait till they're calling through your garbage. That was all we said. And the media was all over me. What'd you say to Brent? Then the bailiff said, Justin, we need to talk to you in the judge's chambers. I said, okay. And I walked in there. Judge DeLucchi said, we're going to go ahead and let you go.
Justin Falconer is dismissed for having contact with the victim's brother, Brent Rocha, despite the fact that their exchange had nothing to do with the case.
I kind of was surprised by it. Garagos was furious. I remember Mark Garagos saying, are we letting the media pick our juries now?
Garagos demanded a mistrial, but was refused. Justin Falconer, dismissed and now free to talk to the press, gave both the prosecution and the defense their first real insight as to what the jury might be thinking.
An excused juror told reporters he thinks Scott Peterson is not guilty.
I haven't seen anything that, would make me believe that, he committed this crime.
Justin Faulkner was very clear about that Scott Peterson was innocent, and it was a real wake-up call for both sides.
Amber Frey knows she's a reluctant celebrity in an intensely publicized murder trial.
When Amber Frey walked into that courtroom, everything changed.
It was packed, and it was completely silent. You could hear people's bodies shift to see me walk in. After they swear you in, I was to point out Scott Peterson. That was the only time that I had to look at him. Only thing I had to do was give truthful testimony.
What she was able to do on that stand turned every member of that jury against Scott Peterson. Not only by her testimony, but more importantly, by those tapes.
Cooperating with the police, Amber Frey had started taping her conversations with Scott just 6 days after Lacey went missing. These tapes became the prosecution's most damning evidence.
One of the most poignant phone calls between Amber Frey and Scott Peterson was a call made on New Year's Eve. And during that time, there's a vigil going on for Lacey.
Hello?
Baby?
Yes.
Amber?
How was your New Year's?
It's good. It's pretty awesome. Fireworks there for the Eiffel Tower.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you guys decided to go out.
Oh, definitely.
Scott told me he's in Europe and he was walking on cobblestones and there was all kinds of festivities going on.
You never remember your friend's name.
Pasquale. Pasquale, yeah.
Good. Did you make any New Year's resolutions?
What should my New Year's resolution be?
Oh, I don't know. That was my question.
What he did, talking on the phone to his mistress, lying about being in Paris while he's at a vigil for his missing wife, is something that you cannot relate to as a human being.
Miss you, and I'll try to call you back. It'll be 9 o'clock here in the morning. I'm going to call you back for New Year's. For your New Year's. Talk to you soon.
Typically, as a juror, you envision yourself as the defendant. This was a scenario where, as a juror, you look at him and you listen to those tapes, and you cannot envision yourself in his seat.
I miss you, baby.
You too.
Just remember how special you are.
I get reminded every so often.
Our relationship, it will grow.
Mm-hmm.
Have confidence in that.
But you know, everything in its time.
You know how beautiful you are. Good night.
Good night.
The jury is now seeing two faces of Scott Peterson. One where he's the grieving husband that he plays for the cameras. On the other end, a narcissist, psychopath who's on the phone with the woman he's romancing while his wife is still missing and he's portraying himself as the grieving husband. And the jury is not liking Scott Peterson. That jury hated him.
Amber Frey's conversation with Scott, they did tend to make you wonder about the credibility of the individual sitting in the defense table.
What the prosecution was doing was putting up a picture of Lacey Peterson all alone at a Christmas party, pregnant. This is what Lacey was doing while he's cheating with Amber Frey. Is that any evidence of anything? No. Is that a rational argument? No. Was it a persuasive argument? Hell yes.
Amber Frey, they went after her pretty hard. Mark Geragos wanted to ruin her reputation. He said, you know what? She's some floozy, just some loose tramp that, slept with Scott on the first night. But I think she came off very sympathetic. Like, really another victim of Scott's.
The prosecution was struggling, but After Amber took the stand and the tapes were played, it was over. Scott was going down.
The prosecution presents some of its most persuasive evidence near the end of their case. Horrific autopsy photos of Connor and Lacey Peterson.
Little Connor, he was almost fully developed. You could see his face, and all you had is a torso of Lacey. That's all you had.
Oh God, they were terrible. When I saw that, after having seen the beautiful young woman who was fat before, it hit me.
Lacey's mom and stepdad, you could see the wear and tear on their faces, the emotions.
It's been nearly 2 years since Lacey Peterson was reported missing. For over 4 months, the prosecution has presented a circumstantial case against Scott Peterson. Most compelling are the audio recordings of Peterson and Amber Fry and the gruesome autopsy photos.
On October 5th, the prosecution rested. They proved that Scott Peterson had done exactly what he said he did that morning. He went fishing. But they presented a scenario where somehow Scott Peterson killed Lacey. They have no forensic evidence. Drags her out, puts her body in the back of his pickup truck. They examined that truck over and over. There was no forensic evidence in the truck, and it had not been cleaned. Drives her to his office to pick up the boat. Transfers her body in an open parking lot into the boat. He says to himself, oh wait, I have some email I need to check. This is what the evidence at the trial showed.
I don't know if anybody who would have the nerve, if you will, to sit inside of an office and send off Christmas emails while the body of my dead wife is sitting in the back of my truck.
And he goes and he drives 90 miles to the Berkeley Marina.
It was a marina full of thousands of houseboats. There were people there that watched him try to back the boat up into the water. He hit a pole. They saw this. This boat was tiny. They can see inside the boat.
Goes out and dumps that body in the shallowest part of San Francisco Bay. The whole story just didn't make any sense to me.
Starting October 18th, 2004, more than 4.5 months into the trial, with the possibility of the death penalty on the table, Mark Garagos presents Scott's defense.
What I expected from the defense was for them to tell me why Scott was innocent, or to give me some evidence that would suggest that he wasn't guilty.
Eager to create reasonable doubt, the defense presents a different scenario for what might have happened to Lacey Peterson.
Lacey was kidnapped by homeless people. They took her, and then they killed her, and they drove her over the San Francisco Bridge and threw her in the bay. You have a homeless person kidnapping this woman. They happen to have a vehicle that they can afford to drive the San Francisco Bay. And then I guess they had to have a boat, took her out there and dumped her in the bay. That's basically the summarization of the defense's case. There was nothing to indicate or that would support that claim.
A jury trial, especially a murder trial, and a special circumstance case, in other words, a death penalty case, is based a whole lot on emotion and a whole lot on whether the jury likes the defendant or not. We know in this case, Scott was not well liked. In my mind, I thought, you got to put Scott on. You got to have him explain this. I did cross-examine him in a mock cross-examination. It was not enough time to prepare him to properly testify in front of that jury. too little, too late.
You know, Scott never testified. So you had to draw conclusions based on things other than his testimony.
Garagos's decision to keep Scott Peterson off the stand may have been the safe choice.
Why take a chance and put a witness on the stand who might screw you up? Certainly that's why you don't put Scott Peterson on the stand.
I believe Mark felt he was so far ahead and the case against Scott was so weak that he was able to rest without presenting critical information.
The defense never presented any evidence nor testimony that would lead anybody to believe within reason that Scott Peterson was not guilty of murder.
The defense was working on the assumption that they were working an old-fashioned trial where you present the facts. If there's reasonable doubt, you get acquitted. What the defense didn't know is the jurors didn't want to hear the facts.
After nearly 5 months of grueling testimony, the case goes to the jury.
By the end of the trial, I didn't like Scott Peterson, and yeah, others didn't like him either. But it had no bearing on our decision of guilt or innocence.
I can tell you straight up, this jury, they didn't base it on the facts of the case because they had no facts. They did it on pure emotion.
When the deliberations first started, we brought in the whiteboard. We had papers hanging all over. We had flip charts. And, you know, we said, okay, let's begin to dissect the case.
The jurors deliberated for 6 days, and we heard nothing. As every day passed, the intensity just ratcheted up, the pressure. People were coming to the courthouse, even though court wasn't in session. They were just standing around waiting for word that the jury had come to a verdict.
It was a mob outside that courtroom. I'm telling you, it was a hanging mob.
The case was saturated with media, and so the jurors really had no choice but to comply with kind of a mob mentality that was arguably created by the media.
Is it possible the jury is feeling the intense pressure from the public gathered outside?
Those jurors think, oh my God, if I vote not guilty in this, what's going to happen to me? Will they come to my house? Will my life be threatened?
1 week into the deliberations, jury foreman Gregory Jackson asks Judge DeLucchi to remove him from the case.
He went to the judge and said that they're not in there deliberating a guilt or innocence. They're deliberating the best book deal. I want to be off this jury. And inexplicably, he was dismissed.
Removing a juror in the middle of deliberations is unusual and extreme. Gregory Jackson is the second juror replaced during deliberations. Pundits and public alike are shocked by Judge DeLucchi's action.
I've heard people say that our jury foreman wanted off because he felt threatened by other jurors. And I don't know how he would have felt that way.
Somehow those 11 people intimidated the holy bejesus out of him to the point where he went to the judge and said, I really feel threatened. You got to get me out of here. That's shocking to me.
The verdict happened on November 12th. By the time the verdict was going to be announced at 1:30, the plaza was filled, and these people were emotionally charged. They wanted justice. They wanted justice as they saw it.
The day of the verdict, Jackie Peterson, Scott's mom. She walked in, she had the oxygen with the tank, looking frail, and Sharon Rocha, Lacey's mother, along with Brent, Lacey's brother.
The courtroom was packed and dead silent.
I remember the jurors filing in. My heart was like...
All eyes are on the foreperson, trying to read the jury. Was there any kind of signal at all that we could discern? And there wasn't.
A verdict is reached. But is it based on evidence or emotion?
The jury system didn't work.
And will Scott Peterson have grounds to make a successful appeal?
There was critical evidence that was never presented to Scott's jury.
A juror lied during jury selection.
That's a pretty big red flag to me.
After an exhausting and emotional double murder trial that dominated national news for 5 months, Scott Peterson returns to the courtroom to receive his verdict.
The people of the state of California versus Scott Lee Peterson, we the jury.
Find the defendant, Scott Lee Peterson, guilty of the crime of...
And the crowd absolutely went crazy. You could even hear it on the second floor in the courtroom.
Cheers. Congratulating, is like your team just won the Super Bowl.
Yes, it was a circus. People were excited and like giving each other high fives. It was disturbing. All of these lives have been destroyed. There's nothing to be celebrating.
The jury reached its verdict after just 7 days of deliberations.
When we rendered our verdict, what I saw and what my 11 other fellow jurors saw was very clear. Scott kills Lacey. Scott dumps Lacey in the bay. Scott's behavior is not indicative of what one would expect of a grieving husband. If the body had turned up in Sassoon Bay, Richardson Bay, down in Milpitas, 100 and something miles out of where he says he was, Scott would be walking free today. That's not where it turned up. She was found near the Berkeley Marina, exactly where Scott had been fishing. That was really the ultimate factor that supported our decision.
Ladies and gentlemen, Scott Peterson is guilty because he went fishing at the same place the body was found, and he didn't act as a normal husband would act in this particular case. To me, that's shocking.
Detective Broccini has a press conference in December of '02. They announced that Scott Peterson was fishing in the San Francisco Bay. That information was leaked early in the case. It has no value. The fact that he was there on the 24th doesn't prove anything.
Certainly raised the possibility that somebody else could have dumped her body there after Scott became the center of attention.
On October 30th, 2004, the trial penalty phase begins. This time, jurors will also hear impact statements from family members before deciding whether or not Scott Peterson should be put to death.
I think the moment everybody remembers was when Sharon Rocha took the stand.
Oh my God. Sharon Rocha's impact statement was riveting. She spoke for Lacey Cotter.
She goes, "You left her with no arms to clutch her child, to protect Connor." I mean, she was looking right at him as she was testifying to this. I mean, you could hear a pin drop. That's how quiet the courtroom was.
Even for a tough old fart like me, it hits you. But how could it not?
The jurors were crying.
It didn't hit Scott. It didn't hit him. Like, what the hell is wrong with you, fool?
When the jury came back, none of them looked at Scott.
The jurors return once again to deliver a verdict, but this time they will choose life or death for Scott Peterson.
We, the jury in the above entitled cause, fix the penalty of death.
Sharon, she hunched over like this. There was a collective exhale in the room, like, oh. It was over.
I'm not to you.
All all the jury was given in the penalty phase was evidence based on emotion. So how can you expect the jury to make a decision based on anything other than emotion?
Guess what, Scotty?
San Quentin's your new home.
And it's illegal to kill your wife and child in California.
The jury got so emotionally entangled with this and had such hate and dislike for Scott, they walked that death penalty verdict right in.
Scott Peterson was judged, not on the basis of evidence that came into trial. He was judged with a scarlet A across his chest for adultery.
Did people come across like they didn't like him? Of course, because they didn't. And who would?
It was a witch hunt. It was a mob. It was a lynching. In this instance, the jury system didn't work.
I do not believe Scott Peterson should be on death row. I think this was a bizarre combination of media insanity and police duplicity. And what the prosecution did par excellence is make people angry at Scott Peterson. It fed into a narrative that people wanted. Media fed on it. The police used it, and he became the devil to many people.
In 2015, Scott Peterson submitted a habeas petition to the California Supreme Court, looking to overturn his conviction due to evidence that has come to light. Peterson's sister, Janie Peterson, summarized the new information in a statement.
There was critical evidence that was never presented to Scott's jury.
Several witnesses have come forward who saw Laci Peterson after Scott Peterson had left his home for the day.
6 witnesses reported seeing Laci Peterson alive walking her dog around the block the morning of December 24th, all documented in Modesto police reports.
Why weren't those 6 witnesses presented to the jury?
The police interviewed all these people and they just dismissed them. It was important to the police that nobody had seen Laci walking that dog, because if they did, then their whole theory falls apart. Then there's no way that Scott Peterson could have killed her, because he was gone by this time.
Also in the petition, evidence that a house near the Petersons was burglarized around the time Laci went missing.
My theory is that the burglary occurred on the day that Laci went missing. Laci went out for the walk that morning, went down to the park. She came back up. She happened to see the Medina residence being burglarized.
She sees the van, maybe she sees people moving stuff into the van, and goes over and says, "Hey, who are you and what are you doing?" Because that's who she was.
They panicked, they snatched her up, and then forced her into the van.
One of the guys who was involved in the burglary, a friend of his, was now in prison. The guy's brother was talking to him, and the brother in prison says to him, "What about the Laci thing?" And the brother outside says, "Don't say anything. This conversation is being recorded." The defense since then has gone back and said, "Well, we want to see the tape." Oops, tape gone. That's a pretty big red flag to me.
And it doesn't stop there. The habeas petition even includes new evidence about a juror who lied to get on the jury.
A juror lied during jury selection on something really important, which was she'd been a victim of a very similar crime. And when she was asked that question, "Have you been a victim of crime?" she said no. That's called a self-juror. If you can't find out if a juror was biased, it impacts your right to a fair and impartial jury under the Sixth Amendment. You didn't get a fair trial.
It's clearly not over for Scott Peterson.
He murdered my child. So as far as I'm concerned, he's where he needs to be. No, I don't think the wound ever closes. The word closure means nothing to me. It's just a word, because Laci's gone. So that is never going to come to an end and close.